Good morning, folks. Welcome to That's My Farm. I'm Jim Shroyer, your host. We're in luck because we're going to be speaking to Dr. Ignacio Ciampitti, the Extension Crop Specialist at K-State, about nitrogen fixation of soybeans and a nationwide project on nitrogen fixation that he's a part of. We've got to take a break, so sit back, relax. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors. See you in a minute.
Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com.
That's My Farm is brought to you in part by Tallgrass Commodities. Big enough to serve, small enough to care.
Good morning, folks. Welcome to That's My Farm. I'm Jim Shroyer, your host, and we're in luck because we're going to be talking to Dr. Ignacio Ciampitti, the Extension Specialist here at K-State. And there's a lot of issues, Ignacio, about nitrogen fixation. Some years the soybeans seem to do real well, some years they don't, and it can all boil down, or nitrogen fixation plays a big role.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at nitrogen fixation, you need to look at the importance of this. Just compare how much inputs and fertilizer are we applying in corn, and look at how much input nitrogen are we applying on soybeans.
Right.
Which is
in some cases zero, right?
Zero, right?
But soybeans use a lot of nitrogen.
Exactly. I mean, and the point is to emphasize and to make sure our farmers understand the importance of really have a good planting practices. I mean, and planting is the moment really that we are establishing.
Right.
How that
makes or breaks the
exactly crop. How that plant will be finding the environment. And when you're saying finding the environment means if you are planting in a really wet conditions. I mean, those plants in terms of root development will have a really hard time in developing those roots. And when you're approaching, when those plants start having at least 2 trifoliates, is the moment that really start recognizing with the bacteria in the soil.
Right.
And that's the way that the fixation works. I mean, it's not the plant fixing nitrogen, but it's a bacteria that is in the soil that is working with the plant.
Yeah, and it starts about 3 weeks, somewhere in that ballpark after emergence, right?
Exactly. And importance, I mean, to emphasize important to our farmers is like nitrogen fixation will provide huge amount, a very large amount of nitrogen to the plants. We are talking sometimes about 50 to 60% of the nitrogen inside of the plant at the end of the season.
That the plant uses.
Exactly. That the plant use is coming from fixation. So some people will ask where the rest is coming from.
Exactly.
Okay. And you will say the rest is coming from the soil.
Right.
Okay. So that's why farmers need to realize that the fixation cost for the plants is a large cost. The plant is exchanging carbon, is exchanging carbon to get the nitrogen.
Yeah, to make the point here, that nitrogen, even though the bacteria fix it, it's not free to that plant.
It's not free to the plant, and the plant is paying the cost.
Yeah.
The plant is paying X unit of carbons that they go to the bacteria, and the bacteria release the nitrogen.
Right.
And the bacteria increase the activity as long as the plant is committed to give the carbon away.
Right.
And then one of the main points to emphasize to our farmers is that the fixation is one of the most important processes. I mean, in soybeans, in some places it represents 4 pounds of nitrogen per bushel. So when you're looking at big numbers, when you're looking at really high yielding soybeans, sometimes you are talking that the contribution of fixation is between 200 and 300 pounds of nitrogen per acre.
Right, but normally nitrogen fixation is in that 40 to 50, 60 is rare to get that much contribution from the nitrogen fixation to the plant, correct?
Yeah, correct. And we will be talking in the next segment more about what factors are affecting the fixation.
Right. Okay, we've got to take a break right now. Hang on, don't run off. Folks, we'll be right back after these words from our sponsors. See you in a minute.
To see this show and past episodes of Ag AM in Kansas, go online to agaminkansas.com.
Ag Promo Source is a unique group of marketing specialists with one mission: help your ag business grow. Each affiliate has their own area of expertise, and they work together to bring you advice, products, and services. To get started, visit agpromosource.com. Ag Promo Source. Together we grow.
Soil is the life of a farm, and for 25 years, SureCrop Liquid Crop Nutrition has helped growers produce abundant quality crops while preserving and improving the soils they steward. SureCrop offers complete soil and plant analysis with cropping recommendations, delivery direct to your on-farm storage, and quality crop nutrition custom blended for your field. Choose SureCrop for the assurance of excellence for your soil. Call today or visit their website for more information.
The Kansas Wheat Innovation Center in Manhattan is rediscovering ways to get improved varieties and new genetics in the hands of farmers faster. Grower-led and checkoff-funded research initiatives are bringing about positive change. This grassroots leadership provides a strong voice in Topeka and Washington, D.C. Now is the time to partner with Kansas Wheat in moving wheat forward. Kansas Wheat Commission and Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Farmers investing in their future and yours. Log on to rediscoverwheat.org.
That's My Farm is brought to you in part by Tallgrass Commodities. Big enough to serve, small enough to care.
Welcome back to That's My Farm. I'm Jim Shroyer, and with us we have Dr. Ignacio Ciampitti, the Extension Crop Specialist here at K-State. Ignacio, we talked a little bit about the importance of nitrogen fixation for that plant. Let's talk about some of the factors that would affect the amount of fixation the soybean plant would have.
Well, you need to recognize, in comparison with another crop, corn or wheat, when you're looking at soybean, you're looking more at the system because you're looking at the plant and the bacteria. So you need to realize that whatever is affecting the bacteria, sometimes the bacteria is more sensitive than even the plant.
Right.
So, and factors, most of the factors, you will find that affecting fixation, they are soil related.
Right.
Compaction, soil structure. Okay, if you have, lack of oxygen, flooding conditions. Okay, pH.
Right.
Okay, and most of the times we tend to, not to really, care much about this factor, but also, the nutrition that is in the soil, because the bacteria needs some specific micronutrients. So there are sometimes, there are studies that they show some effect of some specific micronutrients on the bacteria. So if you go one by one, let's start if you want from the first one. Let's go first with the compaction.
Right.
We have seen probably in the last 4 or 5 years many fields that usually you get to August, mid-August, and then you start seeing symptoms of nitrogen deficiency, right? And the farmer is calling you and asking you
what's happening.
What's happening, right? And most of the times you tend to assume fixation is working fine. The first question that you ask the farmers, or you ask anyone working on the field, did you have a chance to look at the nodules?
Right.
So did you have a chance to look at the roots and see if you have nodules? And they're like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, some do, some don't.
Some don't. Right. So when you look at that, you will find most of the times that your nodulation is very poor. And in many situations, it implies, for example, planting conditions were too wet.
So you get compaction or sidewall compaction.
Sidewall compaction, or shallow compaction. Affecting root development. So you start seeing
the root volume.
You start seeing that those roots they tend to develop, but the roots are very fine. And then if you find nodules, you will find few nodules only on the upper section.
Right.
When you start looking at the volume, it's very small volume. And those roots were kind of going through the soil, trying to chase places, that they can, explore.
Right.
But the compaction was really affecting the root. And that's one situation why sometimes, for example, our fixation is not working.
Right.
Second one is the flooding. sometimes lack of oxygen, right?
Right.
In flooding, we know that in these anaerobiosis conditions, oxygen is diffused, but it's in a very slow as compared with the free oxygen air. Then you see that those roots are not developing, there is not connecting with the bacteria.
Right.
If you have 48 hours without oxygen, then you will see that basically the nodulation is not established.
And so when the flooding stops, there for a week or two, those plants could look nitrogen deficient, pale.
Exactly, because basically they couldn't establish that nodulation.
It could be flooding that affects the plants outright, but it could be on the nodules themselves or the bacteria themselves.
Exactly.
Okay, we have to stop and take a break here. Hang on. Well, folks, we'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
ValleyVet.com, ValleyVet.com, Valley Vet Supply. Hello friends, I'm Ernie Rodina.
And I'm Dawn Dawson with the Better Horses Radio Show.
For over 9 years, we've been bringing the Better Horses Radio Show to markets all across the Midwest. We talk about God, lots about horses.
We talk about cows, we talk about horse health, we talk to top trainers, and we even talk about Roy Rogers.
We are having a blast with Better Horses Radio Show and would love to take it to a market near you.
So visit our website at betterhorsesradio.com and let us or your local radio station know you'd like to hear it in your area.
The Better Horses Radio Show is unbelievable.
That's My Farm is brought to you in part by Tallgrass Commodities. Big enough to serve, small enough to care.
Welcome back to That's My Farm. I'm Jim Shroyer, and Dr. Ignacio Ciampitti didn't run off during that last intermission break there. So, Ignacio, thanks for being here, staying on the show with me. Like I said before, a lot of people run off during that last, during the commercial break. So, Ignacio, we didn't get finished with some of the factors affecting the nitrogen fixation. So continue.
Well, another factor that we have some information in collecting in the last 4 years is also pH.
pH of the soil.
pH of the soil. I mean, that bacteria seems to be very sensitive to pH changes.
Right.
When you are going to a pH that is more to the acidic sections, I mean, low, close to 5, or even alkaline sections, I mean, going to 8, pH values of 8.
And higher.
Then you see basically that then your fixation activity tends to be impacted.
Right.
And the only way for farmers and for us to really look at that is you just start digging and you look at the roots, and then you see that the nodules is not, they are really selective and they are in few areas of the roots.
Okay. And of course the soil test would help too, knowing what the pH is and putting those two together.
Yeah, we need to emphasize to our farmers to make sure to do those soil testing. I mean, make sure that we take a look to a pH, because this is a factor that is so sensitive to pH that, I mean, we might probably reduce impact fixation by 50 or 60% just by pH changes.
Right. Now there's one, you said earlier that the soil factors affect primarily fixation, but there's one more that's environmental. It comes in the silver combine. The wheat producers we're talking hail damage.
Yeah, and then as you realize, I mean, how hail will be impacting fixation is in a way that is indirectly, because the hail is impacting the plant and the leaves.
Removing the leaves.
Removing the leaves.
Right.
What happens if you remove leaves? Basically, you remove the source of that plant to fix carbon.
Right. The food for the
rhizobia. So guess what happened to that plant if the plant needs to give priority to the seeds or the rhizobia?
Yeah. Right. Or regrowing in this case.
Or regrowing in that case, right? In the case of regrowing new leaves, I mean, the plant will just pick regrowing the new leaves, putting more carbon into seeds. The rhizobia will just left behind.
Right.
And I think that those are situations that you can get to see that then we can start seeing some nitrogen deficiencies until the plant really fully recovers.
And then nutrients are going back down into the bacteria in those nodules, and they start up again.
Exactly. There is a process that we call basically delay on the infection, and then the bacteria stay like stagnant without really contributing nitrogen to the plant. But then once the plant is becoming healthy again, then you will see that the fixation resumes.
Now, a lot of times after beans planted double crop after wheat harvest, you'll see some nitrogen deficiencies associated with that. What causes that?
Well, in many of the cases, I mean, you start seeing, I mean, problems also residue contribution, or compaction on the residue. And then some of our farmers are asking, what happened if I didn't apply the inoculation, right? Because I was expecting that I already have rhizobia in my soil.
Bacteria there.
So we start looking at, we have a lot of information showing trying to rescue the crop.
Right.
Applying rhizobia later in the season.
Right.
And we emphasize this point. If the bacteria didn't recognize early when the plant was small, there is not a delay. I mean, you cannot infect it when the plant is much bigger, because the plant that become lazy.
Right.
So we can talk more about that term.
We got to take a break here, just a second here. Folks, we'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Tarwater Farm and Home has been family owned and operated since its beginning in 1978. What you need for farm and agriculture, lawn and garden, clothing and footwear, and so much more. You'll be surprised at what you'll find in this huge store. They have what you need and lots of it. So come take a look. You'll discover that customer service is first and foremost. Always has been with the Tarwaters. Tarwater Farm and Home, 4107 North Topeka Boulevard.
Next time you see a beautiful field of corn, reach out and thank the farmers who work tirelessly to raise corn for livestock feed, renewable fuels, and exports to feed a growing world population. The farmers on the Kansas Corn Commission work for Kansas Corn with grower-funded checkoff dollars that support foreign and domestic market development, research, promotion, and education to expand opportunities for Kansas farmers. To learn more, visit kscorn.com. That's My Farm is brought to you in part by Tallgrass Commodities, big enough to serve, small enough to care.
Welcome back to That's My Farm. I'm Jim Shroyer. Dr. Ignacio Ciampitti is with us. Let's talk, Ignacio, let's talk a little bit about the response of nitrogen or fertilizing soybeans with nitrogen.
Well, I mean, we have a lot of literature, right? I mean, even from 1960s I mean, on this topic. And I think that the summary of the information when you start going out and looking about many researchers try to apply nitrogen on soybeans and try to find responses.
Right.
Most of the times the responses tend to be very erratic. I mean, and you see that application of nitrogen are really very small. Usually are applying 50 pounds and the applications are changing. We have some studies that they were applying early in the season before, and there are some studies applying later in the season.
Right.
In the literature, when you look at outside, I mean, you will see that most of the times you see responses in high yielding situations.
Right.
Or when you see that the bacteria was impacted.
Right.
You might call heat stress.
Oh yeah, that can happen. Heat stress, sure.
Heat can happen. I mean, soil heat conditions. I mean, early in the season when you are planting late soybeans.
Like in a double crop situation.
Exactly. You are affecting, I mean, that fixation ability. You are talking about sandy soils. When you are talking about sometimes, I mean, low organic carbon.
Right.
And poor soils. You are talking about pH problems, as we discussed before, compaction. So in all those situations, when you know you have some information,
right,
it might be a visual information that the plant is suffering and is deficient, then you might see some responses to nitrogen. Our question, our challenge is to farmers is, will it make sense to apply nitrogen?
Right.
And how much?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that the question that we need to be asked is like, I mean, all depends on what is your yield level, what is your yield target. When you are shooting for 60, 70, 80 bushels, economically you might be more comfortable and going and applying a late season nitrogen application.
In irrigation?
In an irrigation condition, high yield potential. When you are in a lower side, I think that the economics, it might be a problem because you are probably on 20, 30 bushels. And then you might need more extra nitrogen, but how much you might be able to improve that yield.
Yeah, and that middle ground, in that 40 to 60, that's the question. That's the big question mark.
Exactly, and what we are doing, and we will explain more about this. We are trying to conduct a project to try to identify and screen environment, so we can understand much better when we need to apply and why.
Okay, we got to take another break here, folks. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
This is Eric Stonestreet, and as many of you know, I love my home state of Kansas. In March, Kansas ranchers lost homes, equipment, and thousands of cattle from the largest wildfires in the state's history. Imagine losing all you have in a fire. Not just your house, but your livelihood. Ranchers are beginning to rebuild, but it will take years and tens of millions of dollars to build back herds, fences, and other infrastructure. Today, I'm asking you to help. Donate what you can and show your support to the ranchers of Kansas. Simply go to kansasfires.com. Your donation is tax deductible and will go to those who need it the most.
As fourth-generation farmers themselves, Heinen Brothers Ag Service understands the risk and rewards of farming. So when it comes to quality aerial and ground application, fertilizer, ag chemicals, and anhydrous ammonia, call Heinen Brothers Ag today, 800-760-4964.
I had this horse. It was a good horse, except for when the wind was blowing above 30 miles an hour. Wind was blowing about 35, 40, and I saddled him up, rode him out to the end of the lane, and I thought, well, he's doing pretty good. And about 6 jumps later, I was laying on the ground, and thinking, boy, my shoulders sure hurt. I kept waiting and it didn't get better. And so I went to orthopedic surgeon, and that showed that I had torn rotator cuff. And said, well, we'll have to do surgery. I thought, I farm and ranch by myself. This is not going to work out very well. I'd been sleeping in my recliner for about 2.5 years because it hurt too much to sleep in bed on my side. And I'd heard about Kansas Regenerative Medicine Center on the radio and gotten down there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by 11:30 the procedure was all over. They just took some fat out of my side here and spun that down for about 45 minutes and then injected it in my shoulders, and I was on my way. It's something you don't hear about, but I thought it was worth a try, and I'm really pleased. It's really worked out well for me.
That's My Farm is brought to you in part by Tallgrass Commodities, big enough to serve, small enough to care.
Welcome back to That's My Farm. I'm Jim Shroyer. Ignacio, in this last section here, I know that fixation is nitrogen fixation on soybeans is a big issue across the country, and you're involved in a nationwide research project. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, we are working since the last year, and this will be basically our final years. It's a 2-year project, and we are conducting together in collaboration with Winfield United. We are conducting across the entire U.S. I mean, we have 12 states participating. I mean, this kind of idea of trying to see not only just to apply nitrogen and see if there is a response, but really to understand why.
Okay.
I mean, so we are getting information, and we design a protocol of different application of fertilizer at early in the season, midpoint in the season, and late in the season.
Right.
We know usually that responses might be more favorable on positive side when you apply late.
And getting closer to that seed development.
Exactly. When you are getting to the pod formation stage, we know that if we apply there, we might see more likelihood to respond, I mean, to a yield.
And putting on early in the vegetative just causes more problems with lots of potentially more top growth.
Yeah, and also another thing that we're trying to figure it out is exactly what happens if I'm applying 100 pounds early in the season. And then the main questions that we have are impacting fixation and how much.
Right.
Because I mean, it can be something. I mean, a hypothesis of work is okay. If I apply early season, I'm increase my vegetative biomass. I will shoot for high yield.
Right.
Only under really good conditions.
Right.
If I have precipitation, if I have good environment.
Right.
But how much that nitrogen is impacting my fixation. Okay. And those are the things that we're trying to answer with the project. So we conducted last year 33 locations, okay, across all the US, and we are collecting information on fixation at different moments. Just very preliminary results. When you're looking at the fertilizer applications, we're impacting fixation, but not as much as we believe.
As the first believed.
Exactly. So we're impacting fixation. I mean, for just to give you an example, in situations that we're applying early in the season, our fixations might be between 40 or 30% when the plant is just starting. And then when you're applying early in the season, you might get 20%. So there is an impact on fixation. But the beauty about that plant is that the plant tends to recover. Once that nitrate, I mean, that fertilizer is kind of going away in the system.
Right.
Then the plant will be able to start resuming that activity.
The fixation activity.
The fixation activity. And this is excellent for farmers because I think that we understand a little bit much better, and we are looking also for soil factors, environmental factors, to try to provide more guidance to our farmers. When, how, and what is the right timing to apply the nitrogen in order to get responses.
Right. Now you have studies also about some of the yield responses where you do get it. So real briefly here, what are you seeing?
Most of the times we see in high yielding situations or in situations that we know, for example, that we might have a high clay contents or maybe pH problems, we tend to see, for example, responses.
Okay. What's your biggest response you've ever seen?
We have seen responses in some cases, I mean, 20 bushels responses. And think about how much you might be at by that nitrogen. Most of the times we want to put that nitrogen in the soil.
Right.
We need to be very careful about the application of nitrogen and the leaf tissue.
Right. Excuse me. Right. If you put it on through the irrigation system, it'll burn the heck out of those leaves.
Any foliar application need to be very small quantities because we can do more damage
than
helping the crop.
Ignacio, thanks as always for being on the show.
Thanks, Jim.
Folks, thanks for being with us. And don't forget, next time about this time of the week, we're going to have another show of That's My Farm. See you then.
Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com.